Listen to me very carefully, because you are about to witness a shot that was beautifully measured and perfectly executed. It was a true moment of pure perfection on the court. This was a seismic wave that started in the sun-drenched desert of California and rippled through the elite locker rooms. That incredible energy then erupted into absolute pandemonium across the highly crowded streets of Manila today. If you thought you knew exactly how the script for the Indian Wells tournament was written this year, you were completely wrong. You need to tear up the script and throw away those predictions, because the tennis world just witnessed something truly breathtaking. We are talking about the complete and utter dismantling of what we all thought was an immovable object. The world number 3, the formidable ice queen of Kazakhstan named Elena Rybakina, stepped out expecting a routine victory. She is a former Wimbledon champion, a reigning Grand Slam title holder, and a 6-foot-tall colossus on the court. Her massive serve routinely shatters the sound barrier and completely breaks the fighting spirit of her overwhelmed opponents. But waiting for her across the net was a 20-year-old Filipina phenomenon who is kicking down the heavy doors of greatness. The young star just stunned the entire world, and she certainly did not do it by merely getting lucky today. She achieved this by walking straight into the den of the lion, staring down a terrifying force and methodically taking her apart. To truly understand the sheer magnitude of what happened today, we have to rewind the tape and properly set the stage. You need to understand the intense Indian Wells atmosphere, because experts call it the 5th Grand Slam for a very good reason. The pressure is entirely suffocating, and the bone-dry desert air ensures the ball flies across the net with absolutely terrifying speed. However, the rough and high-friction surface grabs the ball upon impact, making it bounce unusually high to slow the overall pace. This unique dynamic slows things down just enough to turn every single long rally into a brutal and exhausting physical test. It is a notorious court that demands not just raw explosive power, but supreme tactical intelligence from every single player. Going into this highly anticipated match, the traditional tennis purists and the odds makers had completely written the young Filipina off. They looked closely at the physical tale of the tape, laughed out loud, and saw Elena heavily armed with devastating power. Her flat, penetrating ground strokes and massive first serve feel exactly like trying to return a high-speed military missile. On the other side stood Alex, an underdog player enjoying a meteoric rise to a phenomenal career-high rank of 31. She stands significantly shorter than her giant opponent and relies heavily on her incredible grit, lightning speed, and relentless defense. To the untrained eye of a casual viewer, this specific setup looked exactly like a classic mismatch and a total slaughter waiting to happen. But there was a wildly electric current running through the packed stadium before a single tennis ball was even struck. You could clearly hear it in the loud stands and deeply feel it in the air, because Alex did not walk out there alone. She literally had an entire nation behind her as thousands of passionate Filipino fans tightly packed the stadium bleachers. They frantically waved flags and chanted loudly, creating an atmosphere closer to a wild football match than a polite tennis tournament. While the Ice Queen looked completely bored, the young challenger absorbed that crowd electricity just as the intense first set officially began. The ultimate nightmare scenario seemed to be unfolding exactly as feared, as the giant from Kazakhstan came out absolutely swinging with terrifying, unbridled aggression. Her colossal first serves were routinely clocking well over 110 miles per hour, painting the white lines with devastating, pinpoint accuracy. The young Filipina could barely get her racket string on the tennis ball, while her towering opponent was holding service games in under 90 seconds flat. It was a total masterclass in explosive first-strike tennis that left the entire stadium absolutely breathless. When Alex attempted to serve, her opponent aggressively stepped 2 full feet inside the baseline, taking the ball ridiculously early. She brutally punished every single second serve with flat, completely devastating return winners that screamed across the hardcourt. In the absolute blink of an eye, the overwhelming favorite jumped up to a massive double break lead, and the sports commentators were already writing the underdog's tournament obituary. The previously roaring crowd completely quieted down as the matchup looked exactly like the brutal, one-sided blowout everyone had initially predicted. She captured the opening set 6-3 and looked totally, completely untouchable out there under the scorching desert sun. But right here is exactly where the narrative dramatically shifts, because this is the precise moment a merely good tennis player transforms into a truly great one. A lesser athlete would have instantly folded under that immense, suffocating championship pressure. A younger, weaker girl would have looked at the bleak scoreboard, stared at the towering giant across the net, accepted her inevitable loss, and started packing her bags. But absolutely not the fiery Alex Eala, who showed us all what true grit really looks like. Between the first and second sets, the young star absolutely refused to panic or let the massive moment overwhelm her. She calmly sat in her courtside chair, draped a white towel over her head, took a massive deep breath, and completely rewired her entire game plan. She quickly realized that trying to match that massive, overwhelming pace was absolute tactical suicide, because her opponent heavily thrives on raw speed. If you hit the tennis ball incredibly hard and flat right at her, she effortlessly uses your own power against you to easily win the point. She brutally redirects that heavy ball into the wide open court before you can even manage to properly recover your physical footing. So the brilliant Filipina made a crucial, game-changing decision to completely stop giving her any pace whatsoever. She made the brilliant tactical choice to forcefully drag the mighty Ice Queen right down into the absolute mud with her. As the critical second set opened, the sheer tactical genius of the young underdog was put on full, glorious display for the entire world to witness. When facing those monster serves, she smartly stopped trying to aggressively hold the baseline and deliberately backed way up. She retreated so incredibly far back that she was practically standing shoulder to shoulder with the line judges deep in the hot California desert. This brilliant positional shift gave her that crucial extra fraction of a split second to properly read and react to the incoming massive rocket serves. She completely abandoned trying to smash flashy return winners and intensely focused on merely floating the ball back deep into the safe middle of the court. And once the long rally actually started, the young dynamo completely altered the fundamental geometry of the entire tennis match. Instead of stubbornly hitting those predictable flat drives, she started rolling incredibly heavy, looping top spin shots deep into both back corners. Because the hard court surface in Indian Wells is famously gritty, those extremely heavy topspin balls would hit the ground and kick up violently. They were jumping aggressively, right up into the tall opponent's shoulders, perfectly exploiting the natural physical mechanics of a much taller player. A giant player's optimal strike zone is naturally lower to the ground, so forcing her to swing at tennis balls up around her neck completely nullified her devastating flat power. The young star forced her giant opponent to generate her own pace off high dead balls, and suddenly the unstoppable machine began to heavily malfunction. The frustrated powerhouse started wildly spraying wide forehands and completely netting her normally reliable backhands under the intense pressure. The sheer frustration on the towering champion's face became highly visible to everyone, but the gritty challenger absolutely did not stop there. Oh no, she ruthlessly turned the knife by recognizing that forward movement was the one tiny crack in the armor of her mighty opponent. The brilliant underdog began to employ the tricky drop shot with incredibly cruel and absolute merciless perfection on the court. She would brutally pin the giant deep behind the baseline with a massive, heavy topspin forehand to strictly dictate the entire rally. She would patiently wait for the world number 3 to heavily plant her feet, and then suddenly slice a delicate, feathery drop shot that barely cleared the net. The roaring crowd watched in absolute awe as the heavy favorite was forced to violently lunge, wildly scramble, and sprint awkwardly forward over and over again. The blistering desert heat, tightly combined with these brutal physical sprints, began to massively drain the heavy legs of the reigning champion. The once immovable giant was visibly breathing heavily, and the entire stadium could literally see the superstar slowly crumbling right before their eyes. The young dynamo heroically broke the mighty serve early in the critical second set, and the packed stadium completely erupted into absolute pandemonium. The incredibly passionate Filipino fans practically smelled fresh blood in the water and screamed their absolute lungs out in pure joy. The underdog gracefully rode that massive wave of momentum, fiercely defending like an absolute brick wall on the dusty desert court. She athletically tracked down completely impossible shots and totally frustrated the Ice Queen into a visible state of complete mental collapse. The fiery challenger successfully captured the crucial second set, tying the entire match and brilliantly setting the stage for an epic finale. Then came the legendary third set, delivering a masterful display of tennis that will undoubtedly be studied for many years to come. It transformed into an absolute, grueling war of physical attrition, where both talented women knew exactly what massive stakes were completely on the line. The towering favorite even took a strategic medical timeout right before the final set, stepping off the blazing court to completely clear her head. She desperately tried to completely ice out the fiery young Filipina and forcefully reset the heavy momentum of the entire dramatic match. When the giant finally returned to the hard court, she looked completely revitalized and miraculously found her monster first serve all over again. For the incredibly tense first 6 games of the massive decider, absolutely neither player gave a single solitary inch to the other. The scoreboard was deadlocked at a nail-biting 3 games all, and the atmosphere inside the desert stadium was completely, suffocatingly tense. Every single point felt exactly like a Grand Slam championship match with absolutely everything, massive resting squarely on the line. The absolute turning point, the terrifying moment of undeniable truth, finally arrived, with the brave underdog serving down 3 games to 4. The towering champion suddenly unleashed 3 completely unbelievable return winners in a row to absolutely stun the roaring crowd. She fired absolute flat lasers right down the painted line, completely overpowering the young defender with sheer brute force. She suddenly generated a massive triple breakpoint, pushing the intense score to a terrifying love 40 on the underdog's crucial serve. This was absolutely it. The exact defining moment the world number 3 was firmly supposed to assert her total physical dominance. She was heavily expected to completely break the underdog's serve and ruthlessly close out the entire tennis match like a true veteran champion. The entire packed stadium went completely, terrifyingly dead silent, anxiously waiting to see if the young star would finally shatter under the immense pressure. But the young Filipina star proved that her veins are completely made of absolute ice, because staring down Love 40 and the exit door, she simply played the greatest service game of her entire life. First, she uncoiled an absolutely massive kick serve out wide that forcefully ripped an error from her opponent, bringing the wildly tense score right up to 15-40. Then came a totally grueling 25-shot rally where the underdog practically refused to ever miss, covering every single inch of the painted baseline until the giant finally cracked and launched a backhand long for 30-40. And on that terrifying third breakpoint, something completely and truly unthinkable miraculously happened against one of the absolute best returners walking the face of the planet. Boldly facing a massive breakpoint that could instantly end her magical tournament run, the fearless young challenger incredibly decided to serve and volley on the biggest stage. She executed a vicious, biting slice serve completely out wide, aggressively sprinted forward to the net, and calmly put away a beautiful forehand volley right into the wide-open court to dramatically force deuce. The electric crowd completely lost their collective minds at this unmatched stroke of sheer tactical brilliance and pure, unadulterated bravery as she miraculously saved the crucial game. tied at a terrifying 4 games all. You could literally see the fighting spirit completely leave the reigning champion's eyes, because the heavy mental toll of having that massive triple break point violently snatched away was simply way too much. In the very next game, the fiery underdog aggressively pounced, returning the tennis ball with vicious depth and boldly stepping right inside the baseline to completely deprive the giant of any precious breathing room whatsoever. At the high-pressure score of 15-40, the phenomenal youngster officially held double match point on the champion's massive serve, setting up a final dramatic rally that perfectly summarized this entire legendary tennis match. The completely desperate champion aggressively stepped in and hit a massive inside-out forehand that would have easily been a clean, undeniable winner against 99% of the highly talented women on the professional tour. The young star was totally caught leaning the wrong way, but she miraculously scrambled, violently skidded completely out of the camera frame on the dusty hardcourt, and threw up a truly desperate, towering defensive lob. That yellow tennis ball seemingly hung up high in the hot desert air for what felt like an absolute eternity, while the entire packed stadium collectively held its terrified breath in sheer anticipation. The towering giant confidently camped perfectly under it, firmly setting her heavy feet for what should have easily been the simplest high forehand put away she had seen all day long. But the suffocating championship pressure, the brutal physical exhaustion, and the absolutely relentless fighting spirit of the young Filipina had completely and totally shattered the veteran champion's intense focus. The towering champion violently swung her racket and shockingly buried that easy tennis ball straight into the dead bottom of the net, officially surrendering the epic game, set, and match to the phenomenal underdog. The exact second that final ball tragically hit the net tape, the highly emotional winner instantly dropped her racket, completely collapsing to her knees and burying her beautiful face in her trembling hands as the joyful tears began to heavily flow. The massive desert stadium completely exploded into an absolutely deafening roar, beautifully mixing the pure, unadulterated shock of the tennis traditionalists with the highly overwhelming, historic joy of the passionate Filipino faithful watching their brightest star achieve the impossible. The completely mind-blowing final statistics show that the totally frustrated giant committed an unheard-of 54 unforced errors, while the brilliant young defender miraculously won nearly 60% of the highly contested second serve points to pull off this legendary upset. Get down in the comments right now and let me know if you saw this unbelievable top 20 upset coming. And definitely smash that like button if you absolutely love seeing the brave underdogs completely conquer the massive giants of the tennis world.